All right, Mr. Bender. The last thing that we are going to talk about today is the best returning quarterbacks, the top returning quarterbacks for 2025. And we're going to kind of sort this out into three separate verticals, if you will. We're going to talk about, the best returning starters, and then we're going to talk about transfers. And then finally, we're going to wrap that up with first-time starters. And I would throw Arch Manning into that pool because he started last year, but it wasn't in games of substance, I would say. So starting out, who are some of your top returning quarterbacks, returning starters in 2025? Oh, you're muted, Bill.
Good for one of those a show. It happens once a show. That's a long-running joke with me and Brian. But Cade Klubnik, I mentioned him earlier. There's a guy that a lot of experience. This best returning quarterbacks, there's not a lot of like sexy names, but I think Cade Klubnik's one. And I always look at, can he throw the ball down the field? 16 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on passes of 20 yards or more, according to Pro Football Focus, says he can. Did not play well against South Carolina and Georgia, though. So that's always the holdback there. Like, if he's so good, why didn't he play well against South Carolina? So he's one that we have. Garrett Nussmeyer's another one. But again, is that by, he played, so he must be good if he's back and threw for 4,000 yards? Well, maybe. And I think those are two that stick out. And then you get into Lenoris Sellers. So who is Lenoris Sellers? He's a guy that's being compared to Cam Newton, at South Carolina. There is some really good things about his game. And it's his second full year as a starter. Is he going to be one of those guys? And then you get into guys that it's like, am I totally sure? I mean, even Drew Aller. I mean, are we sure? Sam Levitt, great year last year. Can he do it again? Rocco Beck, Carson Beck. Those are the guys. So I think, but it really starts with Klubnik with me, and maybe I'm off on that assessment, but I'm pulling up the Heisman odds now to see who are the guys. Well, Drew Aller's up there, Nico Iamaleava, Lenoris Sellers. I mean, I don't know. I would throw Cade Klubnik in that mix, and I think he's right there at number 3 for the Heisman odds right now.
He's definitely one of those quarterbacks up there for me. I love the Cade Klubnik pick. I think he's gotten a lot of scrutiny, and I think it's tough because he's coming in and he's stepping into a role that's had some really heavy hitters at quarterback before in the past. So Cade Klubnik's a good pull. Yeah, there's some other quarterbacks that are kind of fringe for me. Kevin Jennings from SMU, I'm interested to see what he does. Luke Altmaier returns at Illinois. I'm going to be interested to see what he does. But overall, this has kind of been an interesting year for quarterback play because there's not that big returning starter name. Drew Aller, maybe, but the whole thing with Penn State is you got to see him do it. And I'm with that completely. I do think that Drew Aller is a little bit overhated. Not saying that you were saying that, but right. I think just nationally, I think he gets a little bit more scrutiny than what he deserves.
He's a good player. Mm-hmm. I just don't know that I see first round NFL player. And that's what they were building that up after the Boise State game. I was like, not yet. Got to show more accuracy, those kind of things. DJ Lagway is another name we got to throw in there. He didn't start the full season, but I saw on 3 Ari Wasserman had him as his, way too early All-American team, for example. But he could be a preseason All-American. Like, we always have that debate. I'm wondering who if I was making our preseason All-American team, probably Klubnik as of now, but that can evolve. So, I mean, that's that short list of top returners, but I think you're onto something with Drew Aller. He is scrutinized, but at the same time, when you're 6'4" or 6'3", whatever he is, huge, you fit all the NFL prototypes.
Yeah.
And then you go out and you play horrible against unranked ranked teams. He has not played well against Ohio State. He has not played well against Michigan. He did not play well. And then he makes that fatal mistake I don't think he played well against Notre Dame.
No, I'm with you. Look, Penn State's receivers ended that game with 0 receptions and 0 yards. Now, do I think a lot of that had to do with Notre Dame's excellent cornerback play? I do. Some of the throws were very off target. He had an inaccurate game. And there's a conversation that can be had around, well, was Notre Dame's defense forcing those? To a degree, sure. But an entire game where a receiver doesn't have a catch, it's kind of a tough line in the semifinals of the college football playoff.
Right.
A lot of the returning starters in 2025 are all fringe for me in being like the best, because they all kind of fit the same bill of like, are they going to take that next step? I think of Avery Johnson at Kansas State. I think of Lenoris Sellers at South Carolina. I think of Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. They're all returning starters. They're going back to the same teams, but I don't know if I would label them and put them on the same level as a Cade Klubnik, because you got to see him do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you. The returning conversation, I think, is a lot more interesting this season than it was last year. So,
and I agree with that. And then, like, it's just not, and I also do, as you know, some NFL work for us at Sporting News, where I can separate a college quarterback from what they're going to be in the NFL. But I know that when we make our list we make an annual list around draft time of, okay, here will be the 10 quarterbacks to watch for the draft next year. I don't love any of these names right now. Just like I don't really love any of the names in this year's draft, other than maybe Cam Ward and maybe Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
When we're talking about Kyle McCord being the third quarterback drafted this year, that's an overall thing. And I know Brian always has thoughts on this. I would love to hear his actually on why. My view is that the quarterback play has gotten worse. I was looking for a cute word to say. It's gotten worse. Like, as you get to the NFL now, some of these guys break through, like Jaden Daniels did, Caleb Williams. But in terms of like college quarterback to NFL matching, it's not great.
I think it is weird. It's a weird trend. My take on it is I think that the transfer portal is playing a little bit of a factor in that, because I think it's stunting the development of some.
That could be.
It's tough when you're a 19, 20-year-old kid and you're going on your third offensive coordinator at your second school, or potentially your third school. Who knows? And I know the transfer portal was prevalent before now, especially with quarterbacks. But you go back through and you think, and you have guys like Joe Burrow. His breakout season at LSU, I believe, was his fifth year in college. You had guys like Baker Mayfield. He transferred to Oklahoma, but he played at Texas Tech previous. You have guys now who are freshmen or redshirt freshmen that have yet to really play, maybe don't really want to get their feet too much into a true quarterback competition, so they go to where the open job spots are. So I think that could be a part of it. I don't think that it's any mystery that one of the better quarterbacks in this draft is Cam Ward. He had a lot of college experience before he transferred to Miami and had the season that he did. And so that could be a part of it. I'm not too sure. But I'm also interested to get Brian's perspective on that. That's something that I'll be sure to ask him.
Like I said, like I seen Andrew Gilmore in the comments. Well, yeah, Daniels and Stroud are good. Who else? Like Caleb Williams is okay. He's got a lot to prove to me. New coach, we'll see. Took a ton of sacks, but you go past one or two guys, the depth is not there. And I'm not saying you got to be an NFL franchise quarterback out of the college game, but I can say that Drake May is okay, but long way to go, right? Like, you look at, we've talked in recent seasons, we've talked ourselves into Will Levis as a first rounder. That wasn't going to happen. Anthony Richardson had a good combine. We drafted him off that little of experience at one team. And then we're wondering, okay, you can't blame the organization at that point. So I don't know. I just think the level of play at that position, you'll have one or two guys maybe, but the depth this year's draft, not great. Not when you're talking yourself into Kyle McCord or Will Howard, who's probably a day two guy. And I think we do push day two guys up to day one. And next year it's going to be the same case, unless there's some guys that will ball out, no doubt. But if you're planning on, nobody's going to be tanking their draft to draft Garrett Nussmeier or Cade Klubnik or, DJ. I think DJ is a sophomore, so you got another year there. But you get what I'm saying.
No, I'm with you. And then even quarterbacks like C.J. Stroud, he digressed from year one to year two. Now the Texans suffered injuries. I know it's not as simple as saying, well, he just got worse. The team around him also didn't do him any favors. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You go through and you look, it wasn't that long ago where Kenny Pickett was a first-round NFL quarterback.
Right. And it happened. Now there are the Burrows and the, Josh,
Sure.
I mean, we picked apart Josh Allen though when
Oh
he was
yeah.
coming up. We picked Jalen Hurts. I know we picked him apart. People were trying to turn him into a receiver.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's not a perfect science. I understand that. I just think there's a little bit the portal, the just the college game with the reads and the passing game are different when the windows are smaller in the NFL.
Yeah.
And you want that guy that can pitch. I always emphasize that statistic. I'm looking at the guy who can throw from 11 to 20 yards. Everybody can throw the ball far,
Sure.
and everybody can throw a bubble screen. Who can throw between 11 and 20 yards? That's what I've said that for a couple years now, and that's where you'll find the real NFL quarterbacks. I mean, I'm a Green Bay fan, and I pick at Jordan Love because he has bad interceptions sometimes. There are moments of just unbelievable greatness, and there's moments of unreal inconsistency, and that's the quarterback position. So, and it's a good segue into the transfer part of this discussion where I mentioned Mateer earlier. I think he could figure it out at Oklahoma and have a big year. We talked a lot about Carson Beck. What about Miller Moss?
He would. Mm-hmm.
I like that one. I like that Braum has had two quarterbacks the last 2 years transfers. Tyler Shuck, who we're trying to talk ourselves into this year. There's another guy. And Plummer 2 years ago. Those guys, I looked this up, averaged 3,200 yards, 22 touchdowns, 9 interceptions the last 2 years for Louisville. I think that's about what Miller Moss will get them, even maybe more. I know he struggled at the back half of last year.
Miller Moss is one of the more interesting conversations for me going into this season because I would feel a lot better about him because Jeff Brom is a genius offensive mind, and I love how he runs Louisville's offense. The one concern, and I would not have this concern if he came from any other school that didn't have Lincoln Riley at it, because if there's one thing that I have a lot of confidence in with Lincoln Riley is it's developing quarterbacks. His track record, I think, kind of earns him that right. And Miller Moss was the one kid where it's just like, okay, don't really see it. Ended up getting benched for Jade Maeva. Turnovers were an issue for Miller Moss. I'm going to be interested to see how he turns that around with Jeff Brom and the Louisville staff and what they have coming back on their offense. But I think he could be an impactful transfer. I'm trying to think of who else has transferred across, because a lot of the most interesting part of this conversation is going to kind of be the third group that we talk about. It's like the new starters or who's penciled in to be a new starter. But I'm going through and I'm thinking, I mean, Carson Beck will be up there for Miami. He transferred in. It's going to be interesting to see. We've already talked about him.
Yep. I mean, those are the big ones, though. I mean, Mateer as well. Mendoza at Indiana. Mikey Keene at Michigan. That's another guy that I think he could start early, maybe. But I think you run into that problem when you have a guy like Bryce Underwood and the amount of money that they've thrown into him NIL-wise. Your leash as Mikey Keene is so small. And but I did like his game at Fresno State. I thought he was a nice quarterback. So, I mean, those are kind of the major ones that we've seen. Mateer, interesting. I want to see if they incorporate his offensive skill set into what they are doing at Oklahoma. And if that, and in turn, if that works. So I think those are the big names for me of guys that could definitely do that. And, you know, I didn't see too many others that when they got in the portal, I was like, oh yeah, that's going to make a huge difference.
There is another one that I forgot about, and it's Dylan Lonergan at Boston College.
Okay.
He's going to be an interesting one because Bill O'Brien had got a quarterback that has the ability to drop back and pass the ball a little bit. And I'm going to be interested to see what that looks like. Thomas Castellanos wasn't really a fit for that offense, in my opinion, for Boston College. And so I'm going to be interested to see what it looks like now with Lonergan, if he's able to win the starting position, because there's going to be a quarterback battle going on there. But it's an area of interest, especially because Notre Dame travels to Chestnut Hill to play them this year for the first time, I think, since like 2020.
He's the baseball guy, right? He was the baseball guy. Yeah. So, like, you're always fascinated with guys with that kind of arm. I know he never really got his chance at Alabama. But he could be very interesting.
Yep. I know. Let's see who. I mean, Connor Wegman left A&M to go to Houston. Jackson Arnold's at Auburn. Bo Prabula, the Penn State backup, is now at Missouri battling it out with Drew Pine. So
that sounds like an exciting quarterback battle. Aren't you jealous you're not covering that one?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Oh, man, that's funny. That's funny. The last group that we're going to talk. Well, I'm sorry. Before we get there, Bill, any other transfers that you can think of that'll be impactful for this upcoming season?
No, let's talk about Arch Manning instead.
Yeah.
That sounds more fun to me. Arch
Love
and
it.
this group of first-year guys, but I think we got the transfers covered.
Yep. So the transfers are going to kind of be the highlight of what this conversation is, because like we talked about at the start of the show, Bill, a lot of these schools that dipped into the portal to get veteran guys are now relying on homegrown kids for this upcoming year. So how do you see the new first-time starters? Who do you think is going to start the headline? Who are going to be some of the top new starters this season?
Well, Arch, I mean, we can't go 5 seconds without talking about him. He did more traffic at our website for somebody that barely played. Didn't barely play, played enough, but I mean, just the high level fascination, the Manning ties, the opener against Ohio State, the beautiful deep ball, the mobility. Can he live up to the expectation? He is the Heisman favorite, which is wild. I mean, there's college football hasn't had a superstar, like I don't think they've had a superstar that's crossed the mainstream quite like him, probably since like Tebow, Manziel, those two. Those were the two largest superstars I can that were so far. And he was kind of doing that last year. We were talking about him more last year. I'll go back and reevaluate that. I mean, but I'm just going off the lens of Bryce Young wasn't that. Trevor Lawrence was big deal, but he wasn't this in terms of celebrity and the last name. If his name was Arch Johnson, probably be different. But he's Arch Manning, and he has that bloodline, and they have a mega opener, and I think he could make. If they win that game at Ohio Stadium, good luck controlling the hype around him the rest of the year. So I think that's one. And then the guy opposite him, Julian Sayin, if he grabs hold of this Ohio State job, he's got an arm. You could see the arm talent and the 5-star that, do they get back to having a first-round quarterback on top of what they already have? Thrown to Jeremiah Smith. So I think those two right off the bat are probably the two most fascinating. And then keeping it local, obviously, CJ, if he wins the Notre Dame job, and Bryce Underwood, I've mentioned him about 4 times on this show. Does he get that Michigan offense, which was pathetic last year, going? And he's a big kid and going to draw comparisons because that's what we always do. But those are the 4 in particular, the newcomers that I'm kind of yep, I want to see it because, the 5-star label isn't perfect, but when you find a good one and having it at the programs that you have them, I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun to sort out.
No, absolutely. I think all those are spot on. I would put Dante Moore into that conversation at Oregon. He started a little bit at UCLA, but obviously it's going to be more of a headlining job taking over at Oregon. He has a very live arm. His arm, I mean, Notre Dame recruited him for a while, and he was, I believe, committed to Notre Dame for quite some time, a little bit before he flipped his commitment. And so, yeah, Dante Moore is one of those kids that I think that he could make a big impact for that Oregon offense. I am going to be interested to see what Dan Lanning's able to do with a quarterback that isn't like a 5th-year senior. Bo Nix was very experienced at the college level. Dylan Gabriel was very experienced at the college level. So now he's taking over somebody who I believe is going to be a redshirt sophomore. It's going to be interesting to see what he asks of him because he asked a lot of Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel in that offense. But he's somebody for me that I'm keeping my eye on. Honestly, whoever wins the quarterback job in South Bend, I'm going to be keeping my eye on, whether it's CJ, Steve, or Kenny. Kenny is one of those kids that Brian coined this a couple of shows ago. But he kind of has that middle child syndrome a little bit. Everybody talks about the oldest, which is Steve Angeli, and then CJ Carr, who's kind of the baby of the family. But Kenny Minchie is somebody that has a lot of potential at Notre Dame, and he's very much in the mix. But I think it's just, Steve has been the guy that's been there for so long. CJ's the legacy, or not the legacy, but he has the name, the football name, grandson of Lloyd Carr. So I'm going to be interested to see how that all shakes out. Julian Sayin, absolutely. Whoever starts at quarterback for Alabama, if Alabama is going to return to being a playoff contender, who's the kid that's there right now? Is it Ty Simpson? that's going to be in
Ty
contention.
Simpson's the name that he's been around a while. He had a 5-star background too. You mentioned Minchie. Was that title game, and I wasn't at the practices, but I was seeing a lot of tweets about him and spinning the ball in practice. So only so much you can take from a 10-minute interview window, but
Sure.
at least as reporters, we know how to look at somebody and say that looks pretty good coming off his hand, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I was seeing a little bit about that with him. I do know that, when we were sitting at the Texas-Michigan game last year, Pat Forty and I were literally watching Arch warm up. So yes, we are capable of watching quarterbacks warm up and say they can competently throw a football down the football field. I don't know what that's worth or why you would read me more after that. But yeah, I agree with that with Notre Dame. It's very compelling because there's more than one name. Michigan's is compelling because how soon is now for Underwood. Ohio State, if it's not Julian saying, I don't know who it's going to be. Like Aaron Nolan's gone. He went to South Carolina. Will Howard's going.
The other guy's Tavian St. Clair.
Oh, yeah, he's an exciting freshman. So, they like him, Bellefountain kid up here in Ohio. So there's another one. Is it him? Devin Brown transferred, I believe. So
yeah, Devin Brown's at Cal.
So he went there, and he'll get his chance to play. But it is very interesting. Those will be really interesting battles all the way through. But those are the guys. I just think every sentence begins and ends with Arch until, like I always ask, these questions, what if he's bad? And we did mention Sam Levitt, Andrew. I think we did. We probably didn't mention enough. He was impressive.
He was.
Running the ball, more mobility than I thought he had. And then you saw that towards the end of the season. He was really good. Michigan State probably wishes they still had him. Well, they have Aiden Childs. He's pretty good too.
Yep. Aiden Childs was somebody that we did forget to mention, but it's so tough. Michigan State's kind of in the process of making its way back into the limelight. But no, I'm with you. It's going to be interesting to see how they go. I mean, I'm going to be interested to see how much Deuce Knight gives Jackson Arnold a push down at Auburn. He's a highly touted recruit, somebody that Notre Dame fans are very familiar with. So there's a couple across the country. I've read some things. I don't know how much validity there is to them, but I have heard some things that Gunnar Stockton isn't a complete lock at quarterback down at Georgia. Right. I would be shocked if that wasn't the case, but they are having some sort of a competition down there to see who starts. The name of the other kid is escaping me.
Yeah, they have I think Rashada transferred. So they have a Puglisi and Colin Drake won't be part of that. But yeah, that's a redshirt freshman. And Georgia, when they have quarterback, you know what? I can't believe I'm going to say this on the show, but like Stetson Bennett spoiled them a little bit. The fact that they had a reliable option that just won football games and did things the right way. And I've seen Georgia when they've had guys, when they did Eason for a while and, they weren't sure it was Jake Fromm. I mean, maybe that's the guy that they need, but they've had better than average quarterback play out of these guys, even if they've had competitions in the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As much as people don't like it, I mean, Stetson Bennett, one, on top of winning back-to-back national championships for the Dogs, I mean, he was an athletic game manager. I mean, surrounded by fantastic talent during his tenure down at Georgia. But he was exciting enough that he wasn't like a Tommy Rees type of game manager. I mean, Stetson Bennett still had a pretty decent arm. He was very mobile, more mobile than what I thought that he was, if I'm being completely honest. And the story was fun because he started as a walk-on and was like 5th on the depth chart when he entered his time at Georgia. So, no, I'm with you. I do think
for those asking, Jaden Rashada is in the portal training and waiting for the spring window. That's the saga of Jaden Rashada continues to get more bizarre. But as the kids say, that will be a 30 for 30 someday. It will be a pretty short one, but it might be a 30 for 30 at some point.
Yeah, no, I remember hearing that. Yeah, Jaden Rashada, he's sitting out now training. He's not even in school, I don't think.
That's crazy.
Hopefully it's unfortunately some of the era that we're in now, Bill.
Right.
So, well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, just saying. Yeah. Like, I know we got to roll out of here in a few minutes here, but no, I think all of the things we covered today, some things will change in the spring. The sport's doing really well. There was some talk in the ACC, touch on this really quickly, that the fact that the ACC got their league buttoned up, it's a short-term solution. We'll have some short-term stability in the sport. The playoff will change a little bit, but I think we're going to go to 14 or 16 soon. We're going to still have these conferences. That Super League talk that I personally love is probably going to shut down for a little bit. And I think the ACC, at least for the life of this grant of rights deal, looking like it's in pretty good shape.
Yeah. The ACC deal is going to be interesting. I'm glad that they are getting some sort of short-term stability here in this, what is now the crazy world of this 12-team expanded playoff, super conferences, and all that stuff. And so I'm going to be interested to see how that works out for them moving forward. Well, Bill, thank you for stopping in today.
Yeah, it was good. You're less argumentative than Brian, but I love Brian. I love being on the show. I love what you guys do for me and Bill at our show, which we're not having one this week. I know Bill's pretty bogged down with March Madness planning, but if you check us out at Sporting News, it'd be great. And, hopefully one of these times you, me, and Brian do a 3-man booth. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yes, that will definitely be on the docket for this upcoming season. That's for sure.
All right.
Well, Bill, we'll let you get back to your day. Thanks for stopping in here, man.
Hey, no problem, Trevor. Take it easy.
Yep, you too. All right, folks. Well, that was Bill Bender from Sporting News. Thank you guys for being with us for that segment of today's show. There are some mailbag questions in here that we're going to get to in just a second, but you guys know how it goes. Be sure to hit the like button, that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. And as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards. A lot of the conversations that Bill and I had today, a lot of the conversations that you guys are having in the chat are currently going on over in the Champions Lounge at boards.irishbreakdown.com.